Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Kulig, and today we have Olivia from Via Frequency. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. So this is the first time we're talking, right?
Yes.
We've done some
Person.
email back and forth and some music ideation and stuff, but this is the first time we've actually got on Zoom or any call yet to chat and get to know each other a little better, and hear each other's voices.
Absolutely. So nice to see you face to face. And, I always find it so interesting when you get to know a person for a little bit online and then you form this image of them. And then you actually meet them on Zoom or face to face. And it's just interesting. It's fascinating. I love that. So it's so nice to meet you. And I'm so happy and honored to be here on the Tim Kulig podcast. I'm super honored. So thank you for having me.
Well, likewise, I'm happy to have you as well. And if it had been 2 weeks ago, this was a lot longer. I had grown it out to maybe half as long as your hair is. And
really?
for like 2 years. And I got kind of fed up with having to unclog drains and all sorts of stuff. And my process taking 2 to 3 times as long because the hair drying and the product and everything. And I was like, I need a reset,
The hair, it's a whole process. So you understand that. Yeah.
I
get
totally.
it.
So I don't think I've asked you this yet in any of our correspondence. I mean, I know a little bit of your background from the blurbs that are on your website, but how did you stumble across Reiki in the first place and make it a part of your life? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So just trying to gather my thoughts to see exactly where to begin, because my story is very unconventional. I took a very unconventional life path just because of the events that happened to me. So I started life more normally. I was going to school, and then after school I was working. I hadn't really found exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So I was trying different things, living in different places, that type of thing. I'd always had some really deep passions. And one thing about me, which I know you'll relate to from the get-go, is I'm a super creative person. So I've always considered myself a creative. I actually write music myself. I write lyrics. I'm a lyricist. So it's a huge part of my life. And I also, just writing in general has always been a huge passion for me. So I always wanted to do something creative. But through a series of events, life took a number of turns. And I realized over time that I had some healing to do. And that's how I sort of got onto this path of healing and spirituality and just expansion in general. And I'll just tell you how exactly it happened. So I was at work one night and I was sitting at a desk.
What kind of work were you doing at the time?
I was in hospitality at the time.
Okay.
It was just some office work that I was doing. And it was around 6 or 7 p.m. I was wrapping up some stuff and I'm sitting at a desk and I get this insane pain in my back. And it's almost like a spasming, radiating throughout my whole body, but starting in my lower back. And I've never had a back issue, never dealt with anything like that. So I'm thinking, what is going on here? So to make a long story short, I stood up and could barely bend down. And then within a period of 3 hours, I couldn't move at all. I was completely stuck. I just remember laying down on the floor at the time, trying to straighten my spine and elongate my body a little bit. But I was just in such immense pain. And the smallest movement that I would make would completely almost contort my whole body. It was just this spasming that was going through my entire system.
Wow.
And I was terrified. I had never experienced anything like this. Yeah, it was crazy. So that moment actually was sort of like this fork in the road in my life, or one of them. I mean, there's been several. But the subsequent events to what happened that day would put me on an entirely different path, entirely different journey, and also actually give me a lot of purpose that I wasn't fully clear on at the time. So the next 4 years were actually spent putting myself back together physically, because come to find out a little bit down the road, I went through medical care, a series of imaging, neurosurgeons. Turns out I had a collapse in my lower vertebrae. Yeah. So it was literally a collapse in my spine, L2, L3. And I was just like paralyzed in fear. I had no idea what to do. I mean, I was like considered myself like young and physically healthy in terms of like musculoskeletal type issues. So I was just like paralyzed. I went to some neurosurgeons who said, have surgery, like you need to have surgery right away. I would get conflicting opinions. I had a couple surgeons and like I wanted to get a handful of opinions at the time because I was
Sure.
so in so much pain, terrified, and very uncomfortable with having
But
some,
getting under the knife. Yeah,
yeah,
going for the knife. Because
knife is
I worked in construction for 17 years, and a bunch of like, not every time, but oftentimes, the second somebody starts working on your back, like it could go in a negative direction. They got to be really good at what they do. And otherwise, they can make the situation 10 times worse, and you're just in pain the rest of your life. You know what I mean? It's awful.
definitely
Yeah.
terrible. And like I have an aunt who, for example, she had a spinal fusion and I think she had like five surgeries after that. And I'm always like wondering, was there going to be another? Like I hear stories like that all the time.
Yeah.
So
You're
it's
riddled
very
with anxiety, right? You're riddled with that anxiety. Plus, you're in pain. Plus, you're
100%.
not well, right? Goodness, not that's not fun at all.
No, totally. And just to give you a little bit of background, like I, for my entire life up until that point, had really struggled with anxiety. Anxiety was like my baseline for many, many, many years. So with the physical manifestation happening like in my body, I was just beside myself and I basically just sort of shut down. I didn't know what to do and I didn't actually do anything for 4 years. So
Mm.
I was isolated, completely isolated pretty much from the world, unable to really do much. I There were periods where I was more mobile, like I could walk more and get out and do things for certain periods, but there were also periods where I was in so much pain that my mobility was severely limited.
So you kind of shut down period for you, right? Like you weren't advancing, healing or anything, but you weren't necessarily getting worse. You kind of stabilizing things. Like this is
Stagnancy.
your new status quo, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was like this period of stagnancy, and I could just feel the sensation of everything building, like building around me, the stress and the fear, the anxiety, and also the physical pain. Like
Mm.
it was just this huge crisis moment that I couldn't really resolve. So it got to the point where the pain got so bad, and I also started developing like GI symptoms and stuff like that, probably from
Mm.
the anxiety,
Sure.
um, that I ended up deciding to revisit medically dealing with this. So I thankfully was led to a hospital in New York City called the Hospital for Special Surgery. They deal with really complex cases. And I went through a whole series of treatment there, met an incredible surgeon, like straight out of the gate, and just amazing surgeon who I actually felt really comfortable with. And he was compassionate. He was incredibly knowledgeable. He was actually the chief of the spinal department there. And I was very, very lucky and grateful. And he wanted to take my case. So they did all sorts of extensive testing because this was the other question. How did this happen? Like
Right.
I didn't have this.
There's no trauma, right? There's no trauma. You weren't uh rollerblading and
Mhm.
fell and like on your butt or something. You didn't fall off a bike. You didn't get in a major car accident. None of those things were triggers, right?
Exactly, exactly. So what ended up happening, I had a lot of testing. I went through imaging of all different types. It was like a few months worth of a process, and I finally decided to go through with the surgery. They never actually came up with a conclusive, definitive understanding of what happened. Certain hypotheses, like maybe it was some sort of bone weakening or a bone infection, or there were many possibilities, but I was tested for everything under the sun and
Yeah.
nothing showed up. So, I mean, there's speculation, but there's never been like a definitive resolution in terms of a medical explanation. So, I was okay with that. I just really at the time wanted to reclaim some of the normalcy in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After 4 years,
For you.
Jeez.
So I decided to have the surgery. It went amazing. I had a couple like subsequent issues at the time, just technicalities and stuff, but overall, it anatomically repaired my spine. and I got
Awesome.
my mobility back. It was sort of like a new lease on life at the time because I had just become so accustomed to living with this pain and living in this sort of state where everything's building, but there's just no resolve, that I knew I had to do something. And I was so grateful. It went well. I went through physical therapy. I got back on my feet. And it's so interesting because what I eventually realized and the conclusion that I came to was that even after my spinal surgery, I started having physical issues in other areas of my body, like the GI symptoms started worsening, having pain in other areas of my body. And I remember thinking, I don't know if you've ever heard of that game called Whack-A-Mole, where like the thing comes up and you're
For sure. Yeah,
like
yeah.
an arcade game or something. That's literally how it felt. And it felt like my body was at war with me. And I was just in this constant battle. By a synchronistic series of events, I was at the end of my rope one day with the physical stuff and with this anxiety that was just building and percolating within me. And I ended up Googling ways to heal, basically
Hmm.
alternative measures to heal, because I wasn't getting anywhere with modern medicine, like Western medicine, in terms
Yeah.
of this stuff. I had been to so many specialists. I wasn't getting any answers. And I was frustrated. Like I was frustrated. And I also, for the first time in a long time, I like had this hope because I had my body in terms of like my alignment and my physical musculoskeletal system back. But I knew there had to be some other explanation and there had to be a better process to address what I was going through. I ended up on Google, and that same day I scheduled an appointment with a Reiki practitioner. And that day was probably the biggest moment that changed the entire trajectory of my life, because I ended up in her office and on the table. At that time, I went to an in person Reiki session, which
Yeah.
it can be done either way. And I had like the biggest emotional release probably of my life. And I also had this incredible vision while I was on the table, eyes closed, a vision of like past traumas arising, so many things going on. I was in disbelief, but I was almost felt like I was out of my body a little bit,
Hmm.
as it was such a profound experience. And from that day, I came to realize that the emotional trauma that I had experienced in my life and this sort of unprocessed anxiety was manifesting in my body.
Right.
And
Like you hadn't cleared it from your system, so it was coming out in physical form.
yeah,
Ailments, pains,
yeah,
chronic stuff, right? Like just because it's unresolved, right? It's sitting there waiting for you to address it and release yourself of it, basically, right?
absolutely. It's just waiting for me to liberate myself and free myself. And here I am completely unaware and probably just pushing it down in every single way possible. So after that, the session actually lasted like a couple hours. It was a long session and
Mm,
it just opened my mind and put me on this completely different trajectory. And I became just like this sponge for knowledge, just wanting to learn everything about the body and holistic healing and energy, and trying to understand this sort of this new world that my mind had been opened up to through the
right.
work and through meeting this practitioner, and also just experiencing such a vivid, real, transformative visual experience that I'd had with my eyes closed, thinking like, what is this? And what is happening to me? And I remember being on that table and feeling such a profound sense of just like love and almost an inner stillness that I probably hadn't experienced maybe ever. It gave me,
The love, was it self-generated or was it from
yeah,
some other source?
it felt, I think it's both,
Okay.
it's because I'm a firm believer that like everything is encompassed within each of us as well.
Hmm.
And that the practitioner actually at the time, she made a note. She said your heart chakra, which is like the energy center in your heart, was bubbling. And that's exactly how it felt to me. I just felt like I was, something else was in me that was so pure and so beautiful and so moving. And it really opened my mind, it opened my heart, and opened my energy to like, I have not been living. I have been living cut off from this entire experience of life here. And I have to do everything I possibly can to get all these other parts of me and these traumatized parts, because part of the vision on the table is also re-experiencing some traumas and stuff.
Okay.
And I was like, I have to bring these parts of me here, present. I have to find resolution and I have to integrate the whole. And of course, that wasn't the language I was using at the time, but it was this really just profound, sincere vision of there's something here that I know is real and I want to know what it is.
I need to explore it deeper, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's basically how I was introduced to Reiki. Crazy story, but
Yeah. So then were you in Connecticut at the time or were you somewhere else?
I wasn't
Uh,
Connecticut. Yeah.
okay. So did you end up almost immediately getting training, go into
No,
training for that or
no.
how did that work?
So I didn't almost immediately get training. I actually took like a period of a few years just to sort of focus on my own healing process and
Gotcha.
really go through those traumas, explore my psyche. And I worked with this specific Reiki practitioner for quite a while. Like I was going to see her weekly. So she was doing the energetic work on my system and basically harnessing that trauma to come to the surface so that it could be processed and released. And every time I would leave her table, it was like an epiphany, an insight, or just like this new perspective on life would come up for me. And I'd also never felt such a sense of alignment. Like I would just feel I was accessing these states that I didn't even have context for. Because
Okay.
even, growing up with such great anxiety and also having experienced a lot of painful stuff and trauma in the past, I don't think my nervous system was ever truly attuned to like a baseline resilient state. So it was a lot of processing in the beginning and just really
Hmm.
working with my nervous system, really cultivating an inner sense of stillness and emotional resilience. And it was amazing because one by one, those physical issues started to melt away.
Yeah, I can imagine,
Yeah.
especially if you're processing these things. I can relate on the anxiety thing because I worked in corporate America for decades,
Okay.
and every position that I had taken was relatively high stress. So, I had a position at a construction company in Connecticut where I gained more and more experience and more responsibility. And by the
Okay.
time I was second in command and the CFO of the company, I basically had this giant, you can't even put it in the book. I can't even get it on the camera. It's so big, like this giant list of columns of
Yeah.
responsibilities.
Weight of
And
the world on your shoulders.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd go home, I'd think about it all weekend. And, I never had, my mind was never clear. I never had that relaxation period. And then I worked for almost a decade down here for a law firm. And you know, that was high stress. There was some volatility as far as management was concerned and how the company was going to evolve with aging original founding partners and stuff. So
Mhm.
it got hairy there. And there was a lot of, time frame there where I just kind of bottled it up and muscled through it and just kept forging on and whatever. And then it reached a breaking point and I decided it's time for a change. That through a series of events and just I'd had enough at that point and just made a move and just cut clean and took a little time to myself, took some deep breaths and decided that this is my new path. I'm going to work with a good friend of mine and consult and help him with his business and at the same time build my own. And 2 years plus later, I am a much calmer feeling individual. I'm not quite there yet. I'm not, perfect Zen calm ever because I'm just a high energy individual. I just very ambitious and obviously I put more on my plate every day than I know I can possibly accomplish. So that gives me, you know,
I was just looking on your YouTube channel and I left you a comment. You probably didn't see it yet, but
I
I was
already commented on it.
music is insanely impressive. I'm hearing your stats, like as you're rattling them off, like
Yeah.
getting to 700 and then to 1,000, and how quick can I get to 2,000? I'm like, oh my gosh, that is ambition. That's amazing. But I can
I
also understand there's a balance.
Yeah, and it's either I have to force it or it'll be forced on me. And when it's forced on me, it's usually in the form of some kind of sickness where my body's like, time out, dude. Like, you're
I've heard
not,
AI stuff too. Yeah.
well, that was me last fall.
that's what I'm talking about. I heard about
Yeah.
it in your podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. It reared its head like 4.5, 5 years earlier,
Mm.
during COVID, which was
Oh,
awful. I go in and have a, you know, diverticulitis flare up, and they're all scared. Do you have COVID? Do you have this? You have this symptom? Blah. I'm like, no, dude, I
yeah.
can't. My
The guy.
GI tract's a mess right now. Just can you get me in there and make sure I don't have to
Yeah.
have surgery? Like that kind of thing. And then to have it happen again, the last time I was in, I was like, all right, fine. I just turned 50 this month. So it's around the time you're supposed to go in and get the check and everything else. So
Right.
last fall, I was like, fine, make sure I don't have anything. I want to be on this planet at least another 50 years. So let's make sure I don't have any cancers or anything abnormal, blah, blah. I'm fine. It's just,
Okay. Good.
yeah, my genetic heritage is not conducive to not having diverticulosis. So my aunt had it, my father had it. One of the three siblings were destined to have it. So there
Oh,
you have it. So now I just have to stay away from red meat, make sure I'm hydrated, high fiber diet. That's fine. Now I know what I have to do. And
if you
hopefully,
I'm curious, did you always know that music was like your passion? Did you have it as a child? Is it something that developed over the years? How did that happen for you? I'm always curious to hear people how it.
sure. So it started, I wanted to play the trumpet when I was in fourth grade.
Oh wow,
And I
that's
was a heavy asthmatic as a child. So
me too.
I had pneumonia 3 times before I was 11. The time when I was 10, fourth grade. Yeah, that was fourth grade. When I was 10, I was hospitalized for it
Mm.
because I'd gotten the flu, and within 48 hours that evolved into heavy pneumonia, and I had like I think I peaked out at 105 or 106 degree temperature.
I get
And
it. You're probably heavy on the prednisone.
oh, I hadn't even hit that. Like within 48 hours, I went from not being sick to delirious
Mm-hmm.
and completely dehydrated. So my parents put me in the hospital, and 4 or 5 days later, with intravenous medication and hydration and everything, I finally got through it.
Oh
But
goodness.
um, that was that was pretty awful. I had a bad
I,
bout of it in 2017 too. So I've had
oh,
pneumonia a few times. Not fun. I wouldn't wish it
oh,
on my worst enemy if there is one.
I
It's just awful.
do because I had the worst asthma as a kid, like the nebulizers, the inhalers, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's not good.
No, no. Um, but my father was at the time my father was like, no, trumpet's not ideal for you're asthmatic. He's like, why don't you play the keyboard? Part of the reason was he had seen some guy out playing the keyboard, and he had all these really cool like accoutrement with it. You know what I mean? Like different ways of playing it, using like a a mouth vocalizer to actually play the keys and the synth patches and stuff, like really cool stuff. So my father was like, oh yeah, yeah. And I gotta say, anything of all the things that he provided me, that was like the best, the catalyst, like do this, because now with these keyboards, I can write anything.
Yeah.
I can play any instrument. So it started there, and it built into, like, I had a digital studio before a lot of kids didn't have a digital studio at the time. Like I had some pretty cutting edge stuff, which was pretty cool. And then once I got a job in high school, I spent pretty much half to three-quarters of my money on buying new equipment and writing music and stuff. And then it was like a time frame where I had a falling out with my old man, and between like 18 and 23, 24, and I kind of drifted away from writing music for those several years, and then I jumped back into it when I was like in my mid 20s. And then from then on, I would do little side projects and stuff, but nothing substantial. I wasn't in any bands regularly. And then I got another studio, like a home studio like this, and basically started ideating and creating things again. But it really was like 5 years ago that I put a line in the sand, and I'm like, none of this stuff on a hard drive on my computer at home is doing any work. I need to figure out a solution to
Right.
this, and a way to get this in people's hands. Like, how do I do it? And my best friend Tom Seymour was doing his MFA, and the subject matter was Kevin MacLeod. Now, I don't know if you know who Ken McLeod is, but he's a composer, very famous internet composer.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the way you pronounced it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he had basically decided 25 years ago that there was a bunch of stock music out there that was just garbage. And he was like, I'm going to solve this problem because there's plenty of content creators out here that could use better music and I'm just going to make it. Well, fast forward, a decade after he started, we literally had built a 2 to 2,500 song catalog that
Yeah.
he offers for free with attribution under Creative Commons.
Hmm.
Creative Commons wasn't even a thing yet. So he was just like, this is royalty free. If you want an extended license where you don't have to tell me who I am and who you got your music from, it's an added fee, whatever. So that was basically the MFA capstone movie that I helped co-produce with my best friend. And
Oh,
in the process, I got to meet him and interview him, and we got to know each other and became friends. And now we work together. We work together, and I am following his footsteps. Basically, that's how I found the path that I needed to write music and distribute it the way that I'm doing it now.
you both are kind of like pioneers of the providing the music to content creators and doing it without a fee.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's a pretty it's a pretty simple gesture, right? It's you can use it for free. You just have to put me in your show notes. It's
Yeah. Like you make what we do possible 100% because I can tell you from personal experience. I mean, I haven't been on YouTube forever, but I've been a couple of years now.
yeah.
And it was almost impossible to find good music that wasn't either super expensive or something affordable.
Yeah,
He's
you have to have a subscription based. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but even like when I first started, I didn't even know anything about subscriptions. I didn't really know what I was looking for. I was just looking for some like stock music that I could use, and everything
right.
would be flagged on YouTube, or it was terrible. Instead, it was like this. I don't even know. It was just not great.
And here's the crazy thing. It'll get flagged on that platform, even for some creators that offer it for free. So that's the whole reason last year when I registered everything with Content ID and reached out to, you're one of the people I reached out to, obviously, and
Yeah.
whitelisted your channel because you'd been using it for years. But I reached out to a bunch of other people that had found my music over the last few years and said basically the same thing. I'm like, look, I have other friends that have royalty free music,
Mhm.
and people are being inauthentic and hijacking their catalog,
I heard.
registering it on this platform, and holding creators ransom. Basically, like, oh, you got this piece of content out there, people are resonating with it. Well, you owe me money now. And it's like,
Basically
no.
it as if it's their own, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I heard
yeah,
about that too. That's crazy. It's
yeah.
crazy
So,
these days. So
yeah. Well, somebody's looking for a quick buck and they're piggybacking off of somebody else's notoriety and work. And I guess you'll always have that. It doesn't really matter if it's
yeah.
music or whatever.
Yeah.
But so you landed on Reiki,
Yes.
and are there any other disciplines that you incorporate into your channel? And
Absolutely. During my own healing process. So basically the moral of the story is that I got into this work because I wanted to heal myself. Like I
right.
realized that I had this inner fragmentation and these physical limitations that were popping up due to that inner fragmentation. And it was like this well was opened within me, and I just wanted to learn everything I possibly could. And also, I wanted to try everything out. Like, I wanted to try everything on for size, see what worked. And that's basically what I did for the first couple of years on my own healing journey before I ever thought about even training in Reiki. I was doing my own energy work. Like, I would go into meditation because like everything changed after my spinal surgery, even in terms of the way that I took care of my body. Like I started working out all the time. I started
Hmm.
incorporating different dietary structures. Like I eliminated certain things. I would try different things. I became like very interested in nutrition, and I just really wanted to understand this body and like how it
Mm.
actually operates, and also the energetic connection between how things actually manifest in the body and what could possibly be going on energetically that is impacting that. It just opened this whole new realm for me, and I was like a kid in a candy store, like just wanted to learn everything. And I mean, I'm totally still on that journey. But I would go into meditation every day during this time and I would do my own energy work. I would sense into an issue I was having, or sometimes I would just sit and observe. And I started experimenting. I started trying different things, trying different methods. And I started to realize that what I was doing in my mind, I could feel in my body. And I was like, wow, this is
Mm.
so interesting. And I was just also being exposed to so much energy healing because I was going to the Reiki weekly for quite a long time and then on and off after that. And since then, I mean, I've experimented with so many different holistic healing modalities like hypnosis and acupuncture and all
Hmm.
types of energy healing. If I have the opportunity to try another modality, like I'm the first to try it. I want to try it all. I just love stuff like that. So I was doing all different types of things for my own healing. And I was also experimenting myself and really seeing what was making the difference and moving the needle and giving me impact in processing my own issues and with my anxiety and all of that stuff. And I realized that during that time, I had undergone like a series of identity shifts within myself. So then I was totally just inspired to learn about the subconscious. And I'd always felt like there's some sort of guiding force that is dictating no matter what I'm trying to do with my free will, there's always this like invisible hand that's somehow pushing me in some direction or that I can't get over this hump. And it inspired me
I
to,
call that the big magnet.
yeah,
I could, I call it the big, like sometimes I just succumb myself to the big magnet because there's parts of my life where I feel like I'm running up against a wall over and over again. And I'm like, what is it? Like, I want this to be finished. I want to fix this. I want to like learn this or whatever. And it won't let me do it. And I could tell you there's a spot in my life in the last several years that was. And I was aspiring to become a CPA, like a full-blown CPA. I had a master's degree and was doing accounting finance work for years, in the two companies I told you earlier. And I was studying for the CPA exam and I just kept hitting these brick walls in my study process over and over and over again. And then finally I left the last company I was with, and now the work I'm focusing on now, inclusive of the podcast and everything else, seems just so much more natural and so much more part of who I am inherently, intrinsically, to my core, that that's just like a whole different life and a whole different person to me. I could still do the accounting finance. In fact, I still do in many ways. I do it for my own business. I do it for Kevin's. I like there's that stuff that's real and necessary, but not to the extent of being, fully licensed and everything. Like that just I was never gonna do tax returns and stuff like I have no interest in that. I have an interest in helping and building value in people's lives, but not necessarily with that. I wanted to have a different connection, this kind of connection with music, with something creative, with another creative, and combine those two things together and have a synergy, you know, of production value, like and make sure that I'm providing something on a regular basis that the users of what I create are looking for.
that just recharges you and fulfills you in so
Yeah.
many different ways. I understand wanting to take on something like the CPA thing or wear a different hat because it might look really great on paper or it might logistically and technically look amazing for life, for whatever reason, whether
Yeah.
it's
A
um,
financial goal or
whatever it is. But I feel like life has this way of coming in and redirecting us sometimes or
Mhm.
moving us away from certain things. And then there's the probably what you call the big magnet. Is that what you
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
then,
exactly.
our tendencies and what our patterns, what's so ingrained and so imprinted within us is like this other force that's sort of moving us either in the same direction or trying to, keep us safe and keep us comfortable. But there's this other mechanism or whatever to the algorithm of life that's redirecting us or pushing us into maybe something that's a little bit more aligned with who we are or
Right.
where we're eventually supposed to end up. And it's so interesting because when I look back at, my life or other people's lives or your life, like you wonder, could I have just started there? Like, or did I have to go through all that stuff in the middle to actually
Hmm.
arrive at that point?
That's a curious statement because, you know, if you'd told me 6 years ago, let's say, that by today, by 50,
Mhm.
this is what I'd be doing and focusing on, I'd probably tell you you're nuts.
You're crazy.
Like there's I don't see a path for that at
Hmm.
all, you know? But that's where I am, and I can't imagine being anywhere else. And I've had some friends and cohorts say like, "Well, man, if you had been writing like you've been writing the last 3 or 4 years, like 15, 20 years ago, how much bigger of a catalog would you have had?" And blah blah. I'm like, "No, no, no, no. None of that would have happened
Mhm.
because the only reason I can write what I'm writing right now is because of who I am right now.
Exactly.
I had to get there, right? So I have an appreciation and a respect and a gratitude for those people that I was for the last 45 years. And now for the last 5 years, I've become the thing that I've had to put on a shelf for a while
Mhm.
because well, I chose to. I didn't have to do anything. I could have just died if I wanted to. Not that that's like positive, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I chose a different path and different responsibilities because of my life path at the time. So,
Hmm.
so knowing that I did that and knowing that now I gave myself the space and the ability to become this thing that I know has been building inside of me for decades is just, it's a gift, even if,
Absolutely.
God forbid I was able to, God forbid I passed away today, I wouldn't want to, but I know I've already made an impact with that and
I
been able to do stuff.
changed so many creators' experience as content creators, but also it's like um just looking at your what you've accomplished and what you've gifted to the world and like the mark you've made and sort of thinking about how all of that started as a vision or started as like an inclination, but maybe you didn't even have the whole vision at the time. And just to look at what you've created out of that, like that's awe inspiring for me because I always love to look at the way that people create their lives and look at somebody like a highly creative person and how their vision can unfold. Like
Yeah.
that stuff makes me tick. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective on it.
Well, one of the things I had been doing the third and fourth quarter of last year was checking out other people's content, like yourself, my friend Kelly Clark, who does like a D&D channel on Twitter and on YouTube and everything. Throughout
What
all of them, what's that?
what's a D&D?
Dungeons and Dragons, like
Oh,
role playing games, theater of the mind, right? I was looking at all these different channels, their content, and more importantly, the tribe and community built around that, the
mhm.
following, the interaction, with the channel, with the individual videos and everything. And I'm like, fourth quarter last year, I was like, you know, I've been kind of flip-flopping with my podcast. I'll go and I'll be consistent for a few months and I'll stop. I'm going to this Podfest in Orlando in January. I should start taking this more seriously. And then something just popped in the back of my neck and it was like, this is an advertising extension of everything that you are and everything that you do. But you don't want to be self-promoting all the time. People get bored of that. So you have to create kind of, how would you do this? And I'm like, well, why don't I start by talking to the people that use my music and build community that way and start that as that's the seed, right? So, and it was persistent last fall. Every time I think about, I'm like, what's that?
The urge to do it, like the English.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It kept gnawing at me. And
Mhm.
it was like, yeah, yeah, do it. Reach out to these people. Everybody I reached out to so far? Absolutely. Yeah, sure. There
Mhm.
was a few people that were a little more, I don't want to say they're agoraphobic, but they're just not, they're camera shy and didn't
Yeah.
want to be on the show. Um, I don't care if it's audio only too. If people don't want to, they have a faceless channel or whatever, that's fine too. Teach their own. There's plenty of very successful people out there that don't show their face,
Yeah.
which is fine. Something in me, in my core of cores, is like, do this. If you want to build a tribe, this is how you do it. You show gratitude to the people that are using your stuff. You give them a platform to to talk about who they are, and you continue to do this, you continue this interaction and this collaboration. And like, I just, my brain is like, you're on to something. I don't know what it is, but stop overthinking it. Just do it, you know?
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let the magnet pull you.
I think that's awesome. And I mean, what better way to build community, but also like what better way than to reach out to the people who use your music. And they're probably from all different walks of life too. So it's probably like this super diverse group of people, and they're all going to bring something a little bit unique and novel to the podcast. And you can kind of go in whatever direction you want with it. Oh my gosh.
What's up? Quick hello. You want to say hi, Kimby? You turn around. He's got kind of a gimp right leg. I'm not trying to make fun of him, but ever since he was a baby, he kind of held it off to the side, you know? And I don't know if he had some kind of like genetic defect or something, but he gets around just fine. He loves to play and he moves around, but he's a talker. If I'm away for a little while, he'll like scream at me for the first 5-10 minutes like I'm home and everything. He's just a
Oh, yeah, he does that too. That
Hi,
chick
buddy.
was so cute. He reminds me of the cat that I had as a child, whose name was
Mhm.
Shorty. Like that is Shorty. That's so cute.
He's a
Oh,
good boy. He's a
so
buddy.
cute.
But yeah, it that vision I think is super powerful. Plus I went to Podfest in January and
The episode about that too today. Yeah.
yeah, that was really incredible. There was so much more to learn than I could possibly absorb. So I
Where was
ended up it was in Orlando.
okay.
So and I think they have it I think they have it in Florida every year. I forgot to ask the founder if
Mm,
that's the case. It moves around locations, but I think they keep it in the Orlando area. But ultimately, it's the longest running, consistently running podcasting expo in the
oh,
world.
wow.
And this was their 11th year iteration this year.
Oh,
You know, a lot of cool things to learn about, like SEO and how to promote it, the tools you can use. In fact, if I had gotten my stuff together prior to this interview, we would have been doing this on Riverside.fm, which is an online platform where you can capture interviews. And then when you're going through and processing the footage after the fact, it actually records everything in separate tracks. So you can do all the editing online. And then
wow.
you can actually do show notes and everything. It's all you can do it AI generated. It literally pulls the transcript and gives you all the stuff you got to drop into your YouTube channel. Like it made chapters for me. So now I can, yeah, I'm like, this is awesome. You know, just for a couple $100 a year. It's really cool. So
Yeah,
it kind of springboarded me forward. Me
absolutely.
knowing also I was going to do this with more people this year. I'm like, yeah, I need to understand these other tools and everything. So it's
And
really,
probably
really
being opportunity too at the pod.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I met a bunch of people. I've still got to do the follow up at this point, but like literally, like it was like about a week ago now, and and just coming down off of it and trying to let your brain absorb all the information because you go to like these half an hour sessions and it's like tons of good information, tons of good information, tons of good. I'm like, okay, I got to go back to my room for an hour and just relax and let my brain absorb it, you know?
Sensory overload. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were talking about a little bit earlier the process of learning how to, you know, healing yourself and then ultimately training and learning how to heal others. You do this on a podcast and you have also an office in Connecticut.
Yeah.
What is different between an in-person session versus what you do online virtually? And I ask this because not because I don't think here's the thing. At one point in my life, I didn't understand remote work. But now that I understand the nature of the universe a little better and the whatchamacallit, the interaction of subatomic part like I'm a armchair person too. Like I understand, like I study and research how the universe works, the origins of the universe, all that stuff. And at the core of all of us is really subatomic particles that interact with each other. This conversation is an exchange of energy and ions, right? Even though you're 1,800 miles away.
Mhm.
And it makes sense to me now more than it did decades ago, that practice that you could do that remotely versus being in person, or maybe you'd have the same effect. I'm just curious, how do you reconcile that with some of your clients, and how do you reconcile that with an online platform where you're trying to be available
Mhm.
energetically to whoever's watching the video? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. And actually, right now, I'm exclusively working distance Reiki. So,
Okay.
healing. So, it's given me, it's a shift from the traditional office setting and from the intimacy of being in an in person, having in person conversation, having in person work. I mean, to be honest, in the beginning, it took me a little bit of time to wrap my own head around like my human left brain understanding of the world and physics and everything, how distance healing can actually occur. Yet I'd experienced it myself so many times. And
Right.
once you have like a direct experience, it sort of lays those doubts and those sort of objections that come up in the mind about some of this stuff to rest. And it also took me because although I'm very creative and very sort of right brained, I also have a very scientific side of me. Like I too
Mm.
love to delve into the science and I love to learn about the mechanics of how things work. And I just have a part of me that's very much very scientific too. Like I consider myself, yes, like an energy worker and an artist of my life, but I also consider myself like a scientist of my body and my being and how things operate and even of the universe. And I think I'm always going to be that way. Like I'm just always going to want to learn everything I possibly can about a thing. It's kind of always been in my nature. Like the surface level, the superficial level has never been enough for me. So that just naturally over time led me to begin studying all different topics and to begin looking into things like quantum mechanics and all of that.
Mm.
Um, so probably the same things. And I can tell that you are also into that because I look at some of your song titles and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
so I definitely get that. But I definitely like even after learning about the science of it and how through processes like quantum entanglement and other things like that, we can affect energy and particles at a distance. Sometimes like that's really hard for people to wrap their minds around. And
Yeah.
they've never really experienced an energy healing or like a very profound session where like my first session, you know, not every session is like that. Oftentimes there's like a progression or there's
Although, because a person's probably blocked, right?
yeah,
Like try to get through, and
100.
if they come to the session, you, if I had to imagine what your mindset was walking into that first session, you were probably at the end of your rope, and you're
I
like, I will accept anything right now into my being if it's gonna make me feel a 1% better, right?
absolutely
Yeah,
like total desperation.
yeah.
And
So
I'm ready. Like I was ready to, you know, give me whatever you got because this
yeah.
is working for me. Yeah.
Yeah, is there a pill? Is there a massage? Is there anything? I will do it, right? Like at that point, you're probably just fed up. So
Right.
you are perfectly open to whatever the universe was ready to give to you, right?
And conventional methods, like the mainstream medical and the pills and all that other stuff, they
Yeah,
weren't. So
right.
I knew that there had to be an alternative, and I didn't wholly trust that or know that at the time. But like you said, when you reach a certain point of desperation, it's sort of like I think the mental shackles sort of fall down just enough for this portal to open in the mind to a different outcome to sort of occur. And I really think that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that comes back to stories, right? We tell ourselves stories all the time, all
Mhm.
day, every day, most of us. I mean, unless you're some guru that can be in the moment every single day, and even they aren't. Even
No,
they lose their path, right? Even the good ones.
my,
Um,
yeah.
but we constantly like we have this inner dialogue. Most of us. I found out I was like 2 years younger than I am now when I found out some people don't have an inner monologue. That's
Yeah,
insane to me. I didn't know that that even existed. They think in images, not in words, which just I think in both. But it's bizarre to me that we're just it's just very strange until you can just accept that there's things that you don't have a definition for. And I think people are just afraid on some level to exist with that unknown, right? That feeling of there's not a definition for what I'm experiencing, and that makes me uncomfortable. Well,
right.
being uncomfortable is an awesome place. Not if it's negative, okay? But being uncomfortable means you are pushing your mind and your body and who you are as a human being and as a spiritual being beyond its comfort zone. And
Yeah.
you're about to grow, right?
Mhm.
You're about to become better than the person you are at the moment. And if people saw that for what it was at the moment, they'd realize this is exciting. I need to do this right now. I need to get excited about this because holy shit, I'm scared. I'm scared. Good. You're scared. That means you're doing something out of your comfort zone. That means you're trying to grow. And that's awesome.
Absolutely. And that discomfort is always this, and like you said, we're not talking like horrible pain or something like that that's calling for a change, but
I'm not hitting my foot with a hammer. That's not what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Good change.
and I didn't come up with this. I heard someone say it, but the cosmic baseball bat, like
Yeah.
when the universe is like trying to whack you out of a state. I'm not talking about that. I mean like the discomfort of not being able to define something or not having context for that thing. It's the unknown. It's the pure raw unknown. It's uncertainty. It's uncomfortable to the human. The human
Yeah.
mind does not like uncertainty, but
We
that's
are
all.
habit-based beings, right?
We're always going to run toward pleasure and avoid the pain, 100%.
Hmm.
But that uncertainty is always the avenue to something greater. Like I think so many people, especially with certain narratives, even in society these days and even in the spiritual community, like they hit that uncertainty and then they want to turn around because it's maybe they think it's I don't know, not a good frequency, or that they're doing something wrong, or a sign that they're on the wrong path or something. I always
Mm.
like to say, because like I've run into this so many times in my own life, that uncertainty and that unknown is the precipice of everything, of so much expansion, and you sort of can't hit the expansion if you don't hit the uncertainty and the unknown. Like it's just a part of the equation.
I found that like yeah, that stream of consciousness that you can experience if you stop pushing back and trying to define everything is the ultimate flow work state, right?
Yeah.
You just like there were times even in the corporate stuff where
Mhm.
I stopped trying to micromanage and I would run at stream of consciousness. I'm like, you know what? Today I feel like before I dive into everything I have to do today, I need to take a 5 minute walk around to all my staff and just check in. There's something that just tells me I have to see what's going on. And like half of them at the moment were either confused about something or needed to talk about something, even if it was personal. You know, I was able to like vet that off and vent that off rather, and get that out of their head so they can focus on the task at hand, right?
Mhm.
Or or deal with something that they felt like they were alone about with the job, but now they had a voice for it because I came there and I offered a platform, if you will, for a quick second to let me know, oh yeah, all right, well, put that aside. We'll talk about that later. Let's meet later this afternoon. We'll do that, blah blah. But it literally wouldn't have come if I hadn't just listened to my inner voice saying, let's take this approach today, or
Yeah.
let's focus on this today, just and when I find that when I quiet myself enough to hear that, I find that the days transpire much more the way that I want them to.
And it's hard because the mind is going to be yapping and telling you to do the complete opposite. It's going to say, like, stay in the comfortable, or don't take any risk, or don't take anything that's off of the beaten path.
It's got to be done by 4 o'clock. And it's like, relax, it'll get done.
List, like the ever evolving, growing to do list. When the thing or the answer or the key is like right beyond the to-do list, but you
Yeah.
can't because the to-do list is in the way. Yeah, I totally get it. Totally get
Wh- Which of your videos do you find people resonate with the most? Is there a specific subject matter that people like the most?
it. It's interesting. I think probably one of my most popular videos is on the nervous system, which is so fitting because that's probably like the biggest piece of my own life's work with myself.
Right.
And I think that life very much has a way of making us experience what we're meant to share with the world first.
Well, that comes from a very authentic place. If you've got an audience member or members asking for that specific Reiki
Mhm.
session or Reiki focus, then
Yes.
then you're coming from a place of a person that's already experienced that.
That,
So the authenticity is 100%. There's no illusion, right? Like I was there. Let me try and bring you to that place too, right?
100%. And also like when it's a topic like that is like so close to my heart and just resonant with every part of my being or that I've experienced on so many levels, there's also just this like a almost like a vulnerability that opens up within me. And also this I guess it's a passion. It's like a want to share on a topic like that.
Mm,
It's something there's some essence that is cultivated through the experience of pain. Once you begin to see the light sort of after like a very dark tunnel, there's some wisdom or something that comes out of that. And it creates this space within you where you want to outflow and over sort of like pour out to other people. I
yeah.
think like the nature of going through things and then being called to share something with the world because there's almost like a whatever that painful event that catalyzed that process is also creating this inspiration that can then feed other people too. So,
Right.
like any coincidence that that's one of the topics that people really tend to gravitate towards.
Do you get requests pretty regularly for different videos? And is that what inspires you to do the various videos with different focus?
Yeah, so I get requests pretty often. I have like a super long list of requests that I
Yeah.
try to chip away at little by little. And sometimes like when I'm sitting down to do a session, like I may carve out a certain amount of time to film on a daily basis or like I never go into that knowing what I'm going to with the intention that I'm going to be working with. Like I sit down, I quiet my mind and I wait for it to come in. Really try to approach my sessions in the most guided and open-minded manner as possible and open
Oh,
heart and just energetically because I find that I definitely need certain forms of structure like masculine structure and I'm trying to think of the word. I definitely need to structure my day with more. I can't really think of what I'm trying to say, but like I have to schedule things out for myself sometimes. But when I'm
mm,
into my work and in terms of something so like sacred as the energy work, if I put too many stipulations on that, or if I put too many expectations on it, it sort of has this opposite disconnecting effect to it almost. So I really try to leave room for whatever is trying to come in during that time and whatever is trying to be created and manifested. And I really try to open myself up as sort of like in more of a receiving mode and just let it
yeah.
go me because that's the nature of Reiki in itself. Like I'm just opening my vessel up. I'm just opening myself with the channel and that's not my energy that's being transmitted. Like I kind of step aside. There are other forms of energy work that I do in my videos that involves my own free will and stuff like that. But in terms of the actual Reiki, what they call Reiki universal life force energy, that has nothing to do with me. I'm just the channel for that. I find that with the intentions of the videos and the topics as well, the best ones come sort of either right in the moment or they'll come to me when I'm doing something else totally unrelated, but in a flow state, like when I'm creating, when I'm writing, if I'm working on a song or just jotting down lyrics, or maybe right before I'm falling asleep, or when I'm waking up, or when I'm exercising, like when I'm
Mm,
just open and receptive and in that flow, that's when the ideas will come in. But when I sit down to do the work, I sort of try to set aside my own like ego a little bit and just allow
yeah.
trying to come through because that's how it works the best. Anything else I'm creating tension. It's almost like I'm creating a resistance.
That makes perfect sense to me because that's pretty much how the writing process works for me with music. I can often dip into different styles and ideate in those styles, but not always. And
Mhm.
when I don't hit the mark, I usually fall into a different style. A perfect example of this was this past fall.
Okay.
So for 3 years, including this past fall, I've been promising myself, dude, you're gonna make some Christmas music. You have to do a Christmas album. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care if you I'm like, I want to do multiple styles, blah blah blah. But every year I'd build it up to this big thing. I'm gonna do like 8 songs traditional, 8 songs lo-fi, 8 in jazz, 8 this, blah blah. And I'm like, I have this huge thing. I ended up doing a compilation album of like 8 to 10 tunes this year
Okay.
that included like 3 different styles, right? Because I was like, you gotta get it out, right? But in the journey to get there, I ended up writing another jazz album, which I had no intention of doing. Like,
Mm.
this is the crazy thing, Olivia. I had no intention of doing this album,
Wow.
and I didn't even ideate on it. I wasn't writing jazz lyrics or like not lyrics, but like licks and little ideas. And then suddenly I was just grooving on a couple of these things, and I was like, damn, I dig these. I'm like, I guess I'm not writing Christmas music right now. So I'm like, and then that album went out, and oh my God, I had some really good positive vibes and feedback. People were like, I really dig your jazz stuff, man. This is really cool. And I'm like, I haven't touched jazz in 3 years. And that last one I wasn't even super excited about, but my God, like that, there's like 3 or 4 tracks off there that I'll actually turn on myself and listen to. Actually, I listen to my music all the time. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Ironic that you're even bringing up the jazz stuff because on the podcast that I was listening to earlier, and I forget which one it was, but I heard about your jazz album that came out. And I was like, oh my God, I need to listen to this. I haven't listened to it yet, but I will be because I love waking up in the morning to jazz music. Like it's my vibe, it's my jam. I love just like starting my day with that vibe. And I'm always looking for new songs and tunes to have on my deck. So, and I didn't even know, like, I didn't know, first of all, the extent of the genres that you've worked in. Like, it's a lot. It's like you've
Yeah.
done so many different forms of music.
By
But
the
like,
way, the
that,
phone app, the
I,
phone version of
the one,
things, the phone version of things is
huh?
all fixed. So if you
Oh,
go and look things up on your phone, that whole resizing, the scaling and everything
yeah,
is all
yeah.
fixed. So there's a little nuance to it. There's still like a end page scrolling issue and a couple other things, but that's going to be there's like a 2.0 release coming
Oh,
in the several weeks, but that's going to include like a blog on the main page and all that stuff. So just
oh.
know that if you do any of the stuff on your phone, it's going to be a lot easier now.
I do almost everything on my phone. So
Okay.
then I'm definitely gonna just for my own personal use and also because I'm gonna be doing some more like topic and discussion videos too. So I'm gonna need other types of music, like jazz would be great. I'm definitely gonna check out the jazz just like for my own selfish use because I was like, oh my God, he makes jazz music too. Thing. Um, so that's really, really cool. And I totally get it. It's sort of like when you could plan something out and make it perfect on paper, it's sort of like the conversation earlier. But sometimes we're redirected and sometimes like less is more in terms of that sort of thing, especially
Right.
because it's like opening ourselves up to more allowance and what's trying to come to us. Because I think as much as we're so often trying to magnetize things to ourselves, like there's things that are meant for us too, just energetically and how we're showing up at any given time. I mean, there's certain things that you just can't explain.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
sometimes we get stuck in a giving cycle, right?
totally.
And that's exhausting. Not
Uh,
only physically, but for your soul. Like you need to recharge. You need to allow people to give back. And I found as I've aged that that's something you need to be aware of. You need to be aware of when somebody is freely giving of themselves to you. It's time to receive. As long as the message it has good intentions, right? If somebody's giving of themselves to you, but all they're doing is harping on you and judging you, well, that's not a good message. But talk to me a little bit about that. Some of the challenges you faced with
Yeah,
things. Tell me about that.
I think, well, yeah, one of the things is just that energetic exchange. It's like there's everything in life. Like I've become so aware that everything, right down to conversation, right down to everything's an exchange of energy. And if there's no like balance or equilibrium there, then it's very easy for us, especially as creators, to get depleted or to
Mhm.
sort of drawn out. So there's a lot of measures that I take in order to sort of harness my energy in a way that I don't feel overtired. And I'm the type of person like I my schedule is super super busy right now, so I'm always feeling a little bit like I'm going in the next direction just because I put a lot on my plate because I love to create. Like I like you said, you're a higher
Mhm.
energy person. You're always creating. I'm that way too. Like there's so many things that I want to create, and there's so many ideas that come in my brain on a daily basis and that move through me. And if I don't write those down, like I know that's almost like this hidden potential that I'm not cultivating and I'm not securing because it could be gone just as quick. And then sometimes they come
Right.
around, but sometimes we lose them, you know? And also,
Sometimes it's just a cool idea that you
yeah,
didn't need to iterate, and that's fine, right? But
totally.
coming from the place of anxiety, it makes sense to me because, I've had a history of anxiety. You've had a history of anxiety. They say depression has its seeds in ruminating on the past. Anxiety has its seeds in ruminating on what is to come. Peace comes from living in the moment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I find that when I get anxious about things, it's me worrying about things I can't control yet, or I can't even control at all. There's not a lot of things I can control. The only thing I control is my reaction to things. Everything
Absolutely.
else just happens around me, Even myself, there's my own brain has this inner dialogue. I'm just sitting there on the couch watching some dumb show, and it starts going through like, "Hey, what about that person you never called back in high school and left them hanging? How do you think they felt?" And I'm like, "Dude, that was 35 years ago. Why am I thinking about that right now? You know?"
Totally. No, my brain does the exact same thing. It's like becoming aware of that is the biggest step because for a lot of people it's just yapping on autopilot and so easy to get lost in any one of those streams of consciousness that most will just lead you in a circle round and round and round in sort of
Yeah.
this eternal cycle.
I think most people don't take the time to listen, process, and forgive themselves for making the wrong choice. They made the best choice they could at the time, right?
Absolutely.
Yourself, whoever else, whether that was the wrong choice or not, it remains to be seen. They put somebody on a path that maybe was negative for a while, but now they're a much more structured and enlightened being later on. So maybe they were supposed to have conflict for a while, Very
Yeah.
strange. Not that I believe necessarily in predestination, unless it's something that we choose to do because we come here and we choose to be here in the first place. I'm very open to any of these things, obviously. I was brought up Roman Catholic. You'd never think it, you
So
know.
I hear you.
So lunar opposite of that, obviously. Not that I don't think that there's not some things positive to take away from any organized or formal religion.
No, they value in everything. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's some value in many of them. The disvalue I see is in exclusion and in saying one group is wrong versus one is right, or exclusion for any reason. Without getting super political, but like, whatever stance you take on anything, I feel like live and let live. If somebody's not doing something negative to harm you or harm others, then what do you care about what they do with their life?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me personally.
Right. Really come to look at like even like a huge part of even my work now and just the perspective I see things through is that no matter what path we end up on or how wrong of a path we might judge it as, or someone else might judge it as, like that path is catalyzing something else.
Mm.
Whether there's like the immediate expansive effect or whether that reverberation comes a little bit later, like the pendulum is always going to swing and there's some expansion that is going to be had from that experience. So I try not to like ever isolate anything as like 100% bad, or of course there's a lot of things that are, you know, harmful and this and that, but I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And I also just wanted to say that, like, we were having the discussion about needing to sort of recharge and have like boundaries as well. Like that's been a huge part of my own process, even the past couple of years coming online, just because
Mm.
that's dealing with a lot of energy. And that's not something that I think you're ever prepared for when you put yourself out in front of the world. And I knew that I
Right.
to share myself publicly for quite a long time before I did, but it took a lot of inner work to get the guts and the courage to actually do it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of wading through my own psyche and a lot of until finally I just had to sort of like dip my toe in the unknown and be okay with whatever happens. But
Yeah. Well, I think people, again, it comes back to stories, right? We do these stories in our heads and we think something's going to be a certain way because we've predetermined it. We've run the story over and over and over again in our head. And we're like, oh, I'm going to do these videos and people are going to think they're dumb. Oh, I'm going to do these videos and I'm going to talk about what I'm doing and nobody's going to give a shit, right?
mhm,
Like all these different stupid things that, not stupid, but they're these subconscious narratives that go on in our head that aren't even necessarily coming from a place of us consciously thinking it. We're just, when we have empty space, we just throw words at it, right?
mhm,
Our brain just throws words at it and it tries to make sense of it. Again, trying to recognize patterns. You know, I don't see the flower of life in front of me, so I'm going to figure out what the hell's going on around me
mhm,
and I'll define it. And if I think there's even a remote reason that it's wrong or it's negative or whatever, I'm going to make that narrative for you. And that's going to push you away from that because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. No, 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 no. We want you to get to a place of equilibrium because that's my job. Your job
mhm.
is to find peace and find harmony, blah, blah. Like, not at the expense of not discovering who you are, though. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, staying in the comfort zone, in the like prison and the constraints of that balance, but never pushing yourself outside of your limits, because
Yeah.
only way to that's the only way to like go through that inner alchemy that lands you with the wisdom at the other side, and also
Yeah.
with experiences, because like you said, like everything, even if you have a goal or even if you have a certain place you're trying to reach, like once you reach that place you're going to realize that it was the journey that had all of the gems. Like I always,
Mm.
like the gems are in the journey, the present, regardless of whether it's this like great elevated perfected state or whether it's really hard, uncomfortable, or even painful. That's always where the power is, always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that discomfort makes you really reflect. If you're open to it and you're aware of it, it makes you really reflect on why you're uncomfortable. And oftentimes it's something silly, again, a story
Mhm.
or a definition that doesn't fit you anymore and you just need to release it. And
Yeah.
you didn't realize that is a reality, right? You're like, maybe if I just sat still every once in a while and didn't doom scroll on my phone or try to fill my ears or my eyes with stimulation at every turn to
Mhm.
avoid thinking or to avoid not thinking rather, because the lack of thought is really where the truth comes through, right? That's a really cool place to be. It's uncomfortable at first, but when you get used to it, and or you never really get used to it, but when you get comfortable with the process, how about that? Right?
Yeah.
No, you get there. It sounds to me like the goal of the channel had your channel had a definition, but now recently it's starting to shift a little bit into more education too. Is that seem accurate that you're going to be doing some of those how to like explanation videos and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So when I started, I didn't really have like a definitive layout or plan. I just knew that I had ideas that I wanted to share, and I had this modality, this series of modalities, and
Mm.
these methodologies that had changed my life. And I was seeing work magic on other people, and I just wanted more people to be exposed to them. And I also wanted a medium to express myself and connect with other like-minded people, which has been also another awesome, like what we're doing right now. I think it's so cool that we can be miles and miles away and connect over these topics that we could probably talk to ourselves about for hours or whatever. So I
Right.
love that the internet and the algorithms, I guess, if you will, have this way of like bringing like-minded people together. So that's another really interesting feature of creating content, is meeting all of these different diverse people, but there's these common threads that sort of, there's a resonance there.
Yeah, I
Really.
think you touched on a really important thing there. I think a lot of people have looked at social media and the online environment as a detriment. Like, oh, we're losing our humanity. We're not connecting physically with people anymore. We're not in the same room. We're not. Have you ever been to a conference where everybody in the audience looks freaking dead? Like
Yeah,
none of them are connecting with the speaker. The speaker
right.
isn't resonating with what they're there to talk about. The audience is fatigued and bored and maybe some interaction. But then you get something online that goes viral because it speaks to so many different people and it's just the it's I don't think it matters, Olivia. I don't think it matters. Like distance doesn't mean squat because if there's authenticity to the interaction, if there's authenticity in the exchange, then uh, that expanse, that distance means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the internet and technology and social media is just like everything else. It's dualistic. I mean, it's a gift and it's a curse, and it depends
Hmm.
on how you use it. It can be a tool or it can be a weapon.
Right.
So I think that though, when we get so heavily into the narratives of the negativity of these things, we sort of fail to look at the gifts and the disconnection that was already present in a person's life before this. And if the social media is causing more disconnection, it's probably just a continuation of something that was already occurring before, or it's just the tool being used at the incorrect end or polarity.
Right.
I mean, I think social media has also been an incredible resource. I mean, for me personally, but also for humanity. How else would so many people be able to connect and organize and realize the resonance, even break down cultural barriers, like
Yeah.
people across the world that you maybe never thought that you had anything in common with, or maybe you even had some sort of wall against for whatever reason, maybe an upbringing type thing, whatever it is. It doesn't just have to be cultural, it could be anything. But to see the humanity in another person just because you both resonate on the same level or you connect over a certain topic, I think that social media can be one of the greatest tools too. So, yeah, I think it's really just about how it's used. And for me personally, coming online, like community was a big thing for me because
Hmm.
didn't have that in, like, I'm still finding my tribe in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Was that pure organic growth for you, or did you do a combination of targeted advertising to draw people to your channel? Because I can tell you, without getting your response yet, I've had to do a little bit of both.
okay.
The nature of my value add is very unique. So getting people to come to free music is not the easiest thing in the world, especially if they don't know who the heck you are, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going around to different, I go to a couple conferences a year now, but
Mhm.
in the beginning, I mean, it was literally just word of mouth and the right being on the right couple right sites and gaining some following that way, and just continuously uploading and encouraging the use of music. And now it's consistent posting. It's
Yeah.
the podcast will reinforce for me consistency in doing a show, which will expand into socials, which expands into making sure everybody knows what's going on, but also do it in a fashion that's not just a cold sell every single time, because that's the tough thing too. You don't want to be I'm offering something for free, but it's like I don't want to shove it down people's throat either. They're going to get sick of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think that as content creators and as people who operate in this social media space, we sort of have to wear all the hats. So we have to do the creation and then we have to be the marketing also. And for me personally, this is all still very new to me. A lot of credit for knowing how to do all of that stuff. I'm trying to learn about it.
It's all new to me too. Like the
It's
last couple of years, it's
oh,
all new to me.
yeah, I'm really trying to like I actually took like a year. I think I finished probably like 6 months ago, just taking a course like a little bit every day and learning about different aspects of social media and online business and this and that because I really like I had this vision, but I had no idea how to actually materialize it or,
Mm.
I even did my own website at the time. Like I really wanted to have the creative control over how it came out, but if I went back and did it now, I would probably have somebody else do it because I
Yeah.
learned how to do all of it on my own. And it was so much like I think for a while I was up at like all hours of the night just trying to figure all this stuff out. And I'm the type of person that really needs my time to recharge too. I will, if I'm not honoring myself, like forget it. And I put a lot on my plate. Like I really fill my schedule and there's so many things that I want to do, but if I'm not taking that time, it's detrimental. My growth, like I haven't used any like paid marketing or anything. I
Mhm.
learn more about it. I just haven't gotten there yet in terms of
Yeah.
and I'm still trying to figure out a lot of concepts about marketing and sales in general. Like that's been
Yeah.
it's crazy when it's just you and you're trying to create this in this space, it really is a little bit of like learning how to do a little bit of everything. That's at least what it feels like for me.
Yeah. 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 Being a jack of all trades, master of none,
100%.
right? Knowing enough to get yourself in trouble and then to know enough to know when it's more than you're capable of handling and getting some extra help as
Exactly.
opposed you right? Like that's kind of where I'm at now. I know I can do like I've gotten pretty most of my album art for the last 2.5, well, since the beginning, honestly, but the last 2.5 years or so has been Canva based, and I design the cover art through Midjourney, typically. So,
Okay.
so I do all that myself because I have a vision of what, like,
Yeah.
I have a vision for an image that would represent the songs that are this compilation, right?
Hmm.
And that sounds very specific and unique, but I feel like I want people to associate this image with these songs so that when they go back to look for something that they want to use, they're like, that woman in a profile picture that's meditating, those are very specific meditation pieces. And that I want to go back to that compilation for this piece that this YouTube thing I'm doing, right? Whereas a different image might bring up a different memory for you and be like, yeah, there was something else, there was more movement in this batch. And that's why I want to go back to that. It's just something otherwise, like even if it's like a similar image album to album to album, you're not gonna get that memory tag. It's almost like that's what I'm doing, right?
Right. I understand that. And I think it's like an artistic, creative person type thing. It's very difficult to hand over your creative control, especially to something like an album cover or even like for me, like a thumbnail for a video or something like that. Like I do it all on my own too. And even when I'm creating the video, like there's a certain vibe, there's a certain energy, there's a certain I want things to look a certain way because I'm feeling it. Like I'm feeling it
Mm.
feel within my system and I know that these colors and this format is going to sort of translate that to the person and get it to the right person and also just illustrate it. If you hear my cat, I'm sorry, he's meowing.
Oh, that's okay. I
Okay.
don't hear him at all, by the way.
But there's always like a certain way that we want to illustrate our art, however it's being translated in whatever capacity. So I definitely understand in terms of like covers and it being difficult to delegate that because
Yeah. Well,
that's
because it's an extension of the what you're creating already. And if you're creating it yourself, it's an extension of your own creation and it's a piece of you. If you ferry that or you shop that out to somebody else, they have an if they're good, they have an understanding and an idea of what you're about, but they don't really know you like you know you, you know?
right. Right.
That was really convoluted. They don't really know you like you know you, you know?
No, I love it.
Oh, that's crazy. That's a loop.
No,
That's a loop to get lost in.
yeah.
What's the most rewarding experience you've had on YouTube so far? Like what made your heart like warm and happy? Like you get some kind of response from a viewer? Like what?
I know the answer to this right away because it just happened.
Wow.
Yeah, like maybe a week ago. I was just reading this comment to my mom because I get really, beautiful comments all the time and really beautiful feedback. And I'm so grateful and so appreciative when I feel like it's translating. But there was this one sentence that moved me so much within because
Oh
it
boy.
yeah, it made me realize maybe even more than I was consciously aware of my own intention for my channel and for my I'm on TikTok too. So for all the work that I do, I realized that there was this one central, I mean there's many intentions obviously and really hard to limit it like I think especially as artists we could go on and on about our mission statement and like about describing our art or our content and everything. The it was just a YouTube comment and it said something like when I watch your videos or when I look into your eyes, when I watch your videos, I feel so seen and heard. And
Oh,
it
that's
hit me in my heart because you could take any other comment and I love them and I appreciate the feedback so much, but this comment hit on something within me that I wasn't even yet aware that that's exactly what I wanted. Like that's exactly what I wanted my channel to translate as for people. Like I want when somebody watches the a session or my work, I want them to feel seen, I want them to feel heard. I want them to feel supported and accepted no matter what's going on in their life or no matter who they are or what they're experiencing. And, I think it also, just to be fully transparent, I think it goes back to my own personal wound because I'm the, like my life experience, especially growing up, but pretty much for a lot of my life, like even into my early adulthood, I never felt like I really fit anywhere. Like I was always like I like to use this analogy, like the square peg trying to fit in the round hole or like trying to find my place in peer groups or in the world. I just never really had an easy time doing that. So I think that I really wanted people to, when they came to one of my platforms, like I really want them to feel home. Like I want them to feel that I'm there and that this energy is there with open arms and that they're welcome under any circumstances, no matter what they're
mm,
through, in any walk of life. And just also, it doesn't matter like who you are, what your past is, what you've experienced, or how you felt in relation to people or the world in the past. You can come here as you are and have some time to just be nourished and supported and loved. And when that comment came through and it was like, oh, I feel so seen and heard, it just tugged at my heartstring and it clarified for me too. This is my exact intention that I wanted and it's translating. So it was a really like fulfilling kind of full circle moment for me because I really
yeah.
like you really want your art to land with people. Like you really want your offering to be received. But I guess as artists, like as creators, we always question if it's actually happening or if the resonance is there. And it made me realize that for this person, it totally was. And that was just so rewarding. So,
That's awesome. That reminds me of times, and they happen, that anybody that's creative, if they tell you it doesn't, they're lying. Everybody questions themselves constantly. Am I
yeah.
on the right path? Am I wasting my time? Should I go back to traditional work and, pull a W-2 paycheck and blah, 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 right? And I can't tell you how many times over the last 3 years plus that I've started to fall into a funk like that. And
Mhm.
then it'll be as subtle as a comment on a video
Mhm.
or a random email that I get from somebody or a random PayPal donation, even a buck. Like, I feel like the dollar is like like, the ultimate, like, I took the time to do this.
Yeah,
And it's just this little thing, but I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate what you do. And I'm like, that's that's like handing me a pile of gold. It's just, yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah,
it's
and
physicalizing that value that you're giving to other people because
yeah.
you know that it's appreciated and it's received.
But this heart could be at 10%, and I get one of those emails or quick little notes or unexpected random donation, and it's
Mhm.
just like cup filleth over. I'm like, yep, I'm doing what I'm supposed to. That's
It's like a
that
battery.
makes
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But multiple batteries. Like I could all of a sudden I just start firing out like 4 or 5 albums from that. Like that's all
Right.
it takes. That's all
Right.
it takes.
It's amazing how the seemingly smallest thing can open the door to so many other things because it's like this inspiration recharge too. Like you're just overcome with inspiration in those moments. And I definitely understand that. And I love those moments. It's feel so depleted and instantly you're refilled. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
not like those are very special specific moments and sometimes the refilling process looks a little bit different, but when those
Hmm.
do come along, they're like really unique and special.
Yeah, sometimes you need multiples depending upon your state, but I find that that happens anyway. That usually happens anyway. So if somebody wanted to get involved with and understand Reiki more and the process of how that could help them, how would they navigate your channel in a way to really like to get like a 101 and then start building off some of the other content you have and gaining the benefits of your sessions? How would they go about that?
Yeah. So to get in contact with me about my work, I always have my website in my descriptions of all my videos. And people can go if you go on my website, I have a lot about my story on there and sort of what calls me to do this work. So I always say to people when you're starting this type of work, like an energy healing or some type of something that requires resonance. It's something that you need to have a draw or a connection to a person. Like, even when sometimes people ask me if I teach Reiki, and I'm not currently teaching Reiki, but I always say to them, like, do your research and go with the one that your heart is sort of drawing you to, that your intuition is pulling, because it's sort of the same thing with a healer. Like, you could go to somebody where it looks great on paper, all the logistics are there, but if the resonance isn't there, I just personally think that's really important. The person who's holding space for you should be somebody that is also filling you in a way. And I think that's a little bit different for everybody. Like everybody has a different set of unmet needs, but I think
Hmm.
the action of holding space in an energy healing session or in any type of healing modality is meeting unmet needs in itself. Like the energy is doing a lot of the work and the energetic manipulation is doing a lot of the work, but the actual act of holding space in a session and being with somebody and them knowing that you're right there with them and you're sort of metaphorically holding them for a little bit and saying, let it all go. Like, let the rest go. Let the world go. Let your thoughts go. All you have to do is be right here with me right now, and the rest can wait. I always say to people, like, go with a person that you're being called toward. Go with somebody that there's some inner magnetic force that is sort of pulling you there. Yeah, if you're feeling called, you can always access me, go to my website, learn a little bit more about me, feel that resonance, and then you can book a session with me directly on my website. I used to not have booking directly on my website, but now I do. So it's really easy. You can just like go to Calendly on my site.
Hmm.
I have a host of different offerings in terms of energetic sessions. Like I have my core session offerings in different times. I also have some sessions that are focused specifically around trauma and some sessions that are focused around relationships. There's a few different offerings on there. And I'm really taking this time to focus strictly on energy healing. So, yeah, that's my main focus. I also have some older videos on my channel that talk a little bit about my journey to sort of like what we've been talking about today. in this queue of unedited videos that I'm working on right now, I have a lot of information about the methodologies, about the modalities, and also just about my path and what people can receive from this healing. So all of that's to come on my channel. There's going to be a lot more information like we talked about.
Very cool.
It's all going to be available. And I'm also on TikTok where I do like bite-size bits of healing because the videos are shorter, obviously.
Right, right.
And do more sporadic topic, shorter video.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the evolution of the channel. That the training, I always like to, I mean, obviously from earlier, you can gather that I'm an investigator by nature. I like to understand the foundations of things, you know? So,
Absolutely. I love that.
um,
And think, by the way, with your channel, because what I think that I'm just going to tell your audience how we connected online, because I'll never forget this. You had commented on a video that I'd used your music in. And I was like, oh my God, it's Tim Cooling. I'd been like checking out your music for so long. And I remember writing on there, is this the magical Tim Cooling? Pronounce your name, by the way.
oh, you absolutely
Okay.
pronounced it correctly. Yes.
I was like, is this the magical Tim Colig? Like I was so excited because I loved your music. So I'll never forget that. But I think when I first went to your YouTube channel, it was before you started putting most of your content up there. So now that I've started to explore your channel and like your podcast and everything, I'm so excited to get into some other episodes too. Over there, excited.
Yeah. What was happening that my distribution network is such that it publishes to YouTube, and you can actually find my music on your phone if you're doing a YouTube short. You do a long form content on your phone, you can't pull up the music, but if you're doing a shorter form there, you shorter form on TikTok or Reels, it's in all those places.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. So it's
yeah,
available on TikTok too.
yeah, yeah. So
That's
what I'll
awesome.
have to do is I've done some content in the past, but I've got to do some more now this
Mhm.
year. And what I'll do is I'll periodically nudge out that content as or at the very least like pin it to the top of all the those social media channels so that people understand, hey, this is how you can edit a video and make sure you put my stuff in there and you have pretty much almost 0% issue with
That's
incorporating my music into it. Because if you use the platform's editor, it's part of their music, it's part of their library. So you'll never have a problem. You know,
awesome.
it's when
Or
I'm sorry?
that newer, like a newer feature to YouTube Shorts, because I didn't think that you could always add. I could just not know how to use it, but I
Yeah.
didn't always incorporate music. But I realized over the summer that like now I have the option to pick music in the shorts, unless it was always there, which it could have been.
I think it was a rollout a little over a year ago when they updated the algorithm and they were incorporating things with their platform's newer content, which was the shorts. The shorts was relatively newer. It was there
Yeah.
to battle Reels and TikTok. So, and
Mm.
it could still be doing that. It could still be a replacement for TikTok, although people say that a lot of people say they're going to move over to Reels or whatever. But my stuff's in both places. Ultimately, some platforms, if you use a third party editor, sometimes there's conflict between what they have in their library and what you've brought into the table to the table.
Mm.
Like, I tell this to everybody that has a YouTube channel and is frustrated and struggling today. YouTube's not what it was 20 years ago, right?
Mm.
20 years ago is a bunch of people putting meme videos up and having fun and taking copyrighted information, splitting it up and making, mashups and stuff like that. You can get away with it. Today,
Yeah.
today you put 5, 6 seconds of something that's heavily copyrighted and forget it. The whole thing's going to get flagged and you're done. So every content creator on YouTube and any other major platform for that matter is in essence their own TV station. So that's one of the things, that's one of my goals this year too, is that I want to do a super deep dive on like the top 5 or 10 platforms because YouTube is 40% of TV that people watch. I mean
Yeah.
that's the crazy, like almost half of TV is watched via YouTube. So
Well, yeah, just personally, I can tell you, I never turn on my TV, but I'm,
yeah,
checking out something on YouTube. So it's the future. It's literally
yeah.
or now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube
Mhm.
and streaming sites have their own barrier of entry and whatever. I mean, ultimately, you have to treat your channel like it's a TV station, and you have to vet all the content that you put up there. So you put a third-party video clip that incorporates some music. You better know what that music is,
Absolutely.
or you're going to get a flag. And I think some of the passive creators and, younger creators that maybe don't know all the rules and everything and aren't privy to like legality and everything, they get frustrated
Mhm.
because they do stuff and then they get these content ID flags, or even worse, like a copyright, strike. And then you get enough of those, and then they just shut down your channel because YouTube doesn't want the lawsuit. So they'll just get rid of you and move on and have you move on. So it behooves people to understand what they're getting into before they start. And that's a value add that I've put a lot of thought into the last quarter last year. And I'm like, in addition to building up this podcast, I am definitely going to add some value by giving people guidance, because it's a constantly morphing and changing space on all those different platforms.
And I just wanted to say, like, also another aspect of your work that has been so valuable. First of all, the website, like your website is, despite like the little technical issue or whatever, looks amazing. And it's
Well,
so
thank you.
easy to copy the text, the attribution text. The design is perfect. Like I found you originally from the other, I don't want to say the name because it's no longer around. I don't know if it's like a weird thing or what, but it's like the film music
Yeah,
website.
yeah, yeah.
So that's where I found you. But to be able, whatever happened with that website, it changed. So then like I wasn't really sure where to get music from. And a lot of times, like as content creators, like if you go to a site, for example, Pixabay, I think is one of them. A lot of those tracks, they'll say you can use them, but then you upload them and you get a content issue, like a strike or whatever on YouTube.
I host mine up there on
Okay.
Pixabay as well, and I'm very explicit about that's the term, right? About how you absolutely have to cite me. You're like, I'm registered in Content ID. Here's the text block that you need to include. If you have an issue, here's my email. Like literally, like whatever the terms is, like, because Pixabay doesn't care. Their terms of service are, it's free to use, but you also have to, if you look through their terms of service, they say be sure to look at the page, the profile page of each individual artist. They may have stipulations. So that's my one stipulation, is like, hey, you just need to put this in your show notes. That's it. And I've had a couple people make that mistake, and I'm like, yep, no problem. This is what you need to do. Hey, thanks for using my music. And I'll always sandwich it. I'll be like, thanks for using my music. Here's how to fix it. Thanks again. Let me know if you have any problems. I can get involved. And then they typically are like, oh, I love your stuff. Thanks so much. I'm sorry I made a like the apologize. I'm like, don't worry about it. The value add also is to hold your hand and let you know how to do it so you can
No,
use it.
that's so generous of you because we're living in a time when everything is available on the internet. I mean, even books, like people are constantly trying to post like free PDFs of books that's a person's work. Like some, I know
Right.
authors are okay with it and everything, but like that's a person that could be a person's life work right there. And they deserve to be attributed and credited for their work. And same thing with like even digital courses. Like there's a whole side of the internet. I wasn't even aware of this, but now I am, where digital courses are being posted like that you have to purchase. So
Right.
somebody's like, long hard earned work could be sitting here and it's just being pirated on the internet. Like it's
It sucks. One of the first movies I did with my best friend Tom Seymour, within 24 to 48 hours of them being released in a digital format or even the physical format, back when they were VHS tapes, they were on Pirate Bay, they were online, they were up there immediately. Immediately. So a long time ago we determined, like, look, first and foremost, we're doing this for the art. And if we make money at it, great. Because we're not setting up shop in LA. We're not pushing these to some big studio and asking for $20 million for a budget. We're literally looking at obscure things in the movie world, in the movies, the cinema space, and doing a dive on it because it's interesting to us. You know, in reflection of that, hopefully it's interesting to somebody else. And so far, the four or five that we've done together that are documentary style, have really resonated with audiences. You know, we've done the festival circuit, which is like the best way to get it in front of people's faces now,
Oh,
as
awesome.
far, you know, as far as like a low budget is concerned.
Right.
And I'll tell you, you know, that I've attended some of the screenings, and the people running the shows have been really grateful for somebody showing up that's actually part of the film. And then one of them, I had like an impromptu talk. I ended up standing up there for 10 or 15 minutes answering questions and explaining our process and how we determine what we're going to do for a movie and that whole thing. But it's just, I don't
Wow.
know. It gets so much easier. And then there's people that they're like, oh, I couldn't do what you do. I can't stand in front of somebody and talk. I can't like look, I can't get on my camera and talk to people, blah blah. I'm like, why not? Why not? It's the thing that you're passionate about and you love to do. Why would I could talk about making songs or other creators and their process forever. It's one of the most enjoyable things to engage my time with.
Right. Yeah, I think once you sort of break into something new, then it's easier. I think a lot of people, you get used to being a certain way or certain patterns, and then it can become rigid. Like you cannot see yourself breaking into another option or whatever. And like, I get it from like the social aspect of coming on camera. Like, I think that's probably difficult for some people. And also just like vocalizing themselves. Like, I understand it's a natural human fear,
Hmm.
but the more we push ourselves and the more we expose ourselves to different things, like we naturally adapt. And a lot of times those limitations are just the construct of our own mind. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
sort of break them down little by little. I mean, it doesn't have to be all at once, but even trying new things. Like I'm a person that really likes my routines and I like my day to operate in a certain way. But sometimes when I do step out of that and try something different, a whole new world opens up. Like,
Right. You
so
realize like if I'm not as rigid, these kind of things become available. Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
then you like another way of doing things or another aspect of life could serve a really important purpose. But if you always stay in the familiar, then of course you never figure that out or find it or give yourself the opportunity to even try it. So,
Right. Right. Doesn't mean you have to change your whole worldview. It might just be like, hey, you know, once a week I should make myself available for lunches because staying connected with people is important, you know? And
yeah,
it's 2 hours of my life, you know, and I'm gonna eat anyway, so why not do it
right,
and share that time with somebody I haven't caught up with in a while, you know?
exactly.
Stuff like that. Well, this has been great. I'd love to have you on again and you know
Absolutely.
keep track of the progress of what's going on with the channel and everything. I'm certainly going to be watching it much closer now, knowing that you're going to be putting out some additional content and some how-tos and everything. I'm very excited about that. But
Yeah,
I'm glad you're.
for yours
I'm
too. Like,
sorry, I was just talking over you. Go ahead, say that again.
oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to talk over you either. I said I'm excited to explore yours. Like I know I said this, but I didn't actually realize how much more you have now. And I'm like so excited to check out all the podcasts and all the music is on YouTube too. And sometimes I just like to listen to stuff in the background. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how valuable your music and just I love your art. So and as a content creator, it's invaluable to have a resource like that. And I'm just so appreciative. And I also like really want to support your journey on YouTube and whatever other platform you're on. So I'm really excited to explore it also.
Well, that's all. I couldn't do it without you and other content creators that use my music. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
I
you very much.
could never thank you enough. And like for even creating some pieces for me and just reaching out and connecting over the music. Like I'm so grateful for that always. Absolutely. So you can find me on YouTube. It's at Via Frequency, VIA Frequency.
Mhm.
And same exact thing on TikTok. And I'm also at viafrequency.com. And you can also access my bio site, which has all of my links in it to like my services. And if you want to join my email list and all of that, and it is biosite dash via frequency. So it's all very simple. And I think you're going to put that in the description anyway.